Felly, croeso bawb a diolch am ymuno ni fel Cymru wastad wedi edrych y tu allan yn ogystal â diogelu ein diwylliant mewn modd ymarferol a weithiau mewn modd protestiol. A dyna pam mae PEN Cymru yn rhan o'r frwydr byd-eang i hyrwyddo diwylliant a diogelu rhyddid mynegiant. Fyna Elfyn yw'n enw i, I'm President of Wales PEN Cymru. And this is Dylan Moore, the chair.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this very special event, which we've called From Wales to the World. As Wales PEN Cymru, we're proud to be a part of PEN International, and closer to home, we work alongside and receive support and guidance from English, Scottish, and Irish PEN centres.
As a nation, we in Wales have always sought to defend and promote Welsh culture and language through non-violent means, and we often speak of ourselves as outward-looking internationalists and as a welcoming nation, recently declaring ourselves a nation of sanctuary. There are countless examples throughout history and around the world today of Welsh people standing shoulder to shoulder with others, campaigning for peace, raising our voices against bigotry, injustice and oppression, or providing shelter for those seeking sanctuary from persecution. Mi hoffwn hefyd sôn am y ddeiseb heddwch merched. Wythnos nôl, 20 mlynedd nôl, ers i ferched Cymru groesi'r ewerydd i gwrdd â merched yn America ac yna ar lywydd, gyda deiseb yn agos i 400,000 yn galw am heddwch byd eang. It's fitting to note that 100 years ago, February the 24th, 1924, Welsh women went to America to hand over a petition of almost 400,000 signatures from the women of Wales, 2/3 of all Welsh women, to pledge for peace. It was 7 miles long, apparently, from the chest, the names and the pledge, the petition itself. The huge chest was recently handed back to Wales from the Smithsonian, and it's a beacon of hope. There's no time to list all the many other peacemakers from Wales, but it's also perhaps worth noting or mentioning briefly the women who walked from South Wales to Greenham Common to set up a peace camp there.
I think we're going to have to stick to one way around the table with the microphone. So given all this history, it's perhaps surprising, therefore, that Wales PEN Cymru is only 10 years old. PEN International and our friends at English PEN not so long ago celebrated their centenaries. There's an interesting history of false starts at various stages. Ours was not the first attempt to create a Welsh PEN centre, but we're not here today to talk about the distant past, but rather to celebrate the journey we have been on since 2014, when we were first recognised as a PEN centre at Congress in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. Since then, our members have participated in numerous international congresses and campaigns on many issues, including the killings of journalists in Mexico and the clampdown on freedom of expression in Turkey. As well as celebrating Wales, the Welsh language, and Wales's multilingual society, we will also be hearing today more about Turkey and its own multi-ethnic, multilingual society with Mehmet Ali Alabora. And Mena will say more in a moment in relation to the poetry she has been sending to İlhan Sami Komac, who we are all hoping will be released from prison very soon. This chair is an empty chair to keep our minds focused on İlhan and all those writers who are prisoners of conscience in places around the world.
Wales PEN Cymru members have also played their part in PEN international committees, and we've also supported the careers of writers within and beyond Wales. One particular successful example was the pairing of Ifor Aglin with Eric Nagale Charles for a poetry tour around Wales. They later built a bridge to Cameroon. And we have always sought to support people seeking sanctuary in Wales through partnering with the work, for example, of the Swansea Asylum Seeker Support Group and of Havant Books. These are just a few of the many projects and activities we have run or been involved in, and there's much more to do to discover and to involve ourselves, and please look at our website. Nid cangen fach yw PEN Cymru, ond mae angen mwy o weithgarwch aelodau arnom. Felly ymunwch â ni, cynigiwch ymgyrch neu weithgarau y carech chi ei weithredu.
Diolch. Please also consider giving financially to support the work of Wales PEN Cymru. Apart from a couple of hours a week of admin support provided by our secretariat, we are run entirely voluntarily. Events like this cost money, and your donations today will allow our campaigns to continue and to expand. There is a card machine in the room, I believe. Okay, it seems to have gone with the flood, so maybe there's a cash point somewhere near, I'd imagine. And definitely there is a link in the chat online, which Dominic will share with all of you watching at home now, both of which make it really easy to give. We do extend, of course, a particular welcome to those of you joining online from villages, towns and cities across Wales and places far beyond. And thank those here in London for travelling so far and from so wide to be with us today. And we won't do a big list of thank yous, but we do want to thank one particular person. That is our gratitude to Dominic Williams for making the magic happen in hybrid. Diolch, Dominic.
It's perhaps fitting that we are holding this event as part of Wales Week in London, following the joint letter we signed along with English PEN and other PEN groups to Rishi Sunak calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Israel and the Gaza conflict. We also made a note of all the journalists that have been killed during that war. The UK government must take measures not only to protect the lives and human rights of journalists and writers, but also the many other innocent people affected by the war.
So with all of that in mind, let us this afternoon raise our voices for peace and freedom, loud and clear, above the din and darkness of injustice and war. And let us also listen intently to the voices, stories, and languages of others. This is a celebration of our differences and those things which bind us together. Ymlaen felly ar darlleniad, a'n darllenydd cyntaf yw Menna Elfyn.
Thank you. I better not fiddle around too much with that. I'm going to read two poems, 2.5 perhaps, because I'll be reading a bit in Welsh as well. And I'll be reading the work of our two poets who can't be with us for various reasons. The first is Ilan Sami Komach, as you heard, who's been in prison in a Turkish prison for the past 30 years and may be hopefully released at the end of this year. I've been writing a new poem to him every month for the past 2 years, I thought. He says 3. I think he's got more time to make the numbers than I have. And this is a poem that I wrote after sending him one of those poems. He then wrote me a poem back, and it's about the rowan tree. I sent him I was cheeky enough to put a leaf of a rowan tree in with the cards. And then this is the poem I wrote, remembering the rowan tree is tree of health and goodwill. So I'll start with my poem, just a few lines. And I have an epigraph of him, his poetry, one of his works. He's produced 8 volumes of poetry in the past 20, 30 years. Because the going is poetry, rose is the road, Ilan. Pes gallwn mi anfonwn latau I ti yn dy gaethiwed, ni chaniateu'r allwedd. Nid oes modd rhoi awyr fy ngwlad I ti, na chostrel o law sy'n gwneud ein gwlad mor nodedig. If I could, I'd send you a llatau, a gift poem in Welsh, a llatau, in your captivity. A key is not permitted. I can't send the air of my country or a jar of rain which has made my country infamous. I send you a leaf from the rowan tree, beautiful for you to hold in both hands. In its veins, a secret message, Criaf o Len, a cry behind a veil. And the songs murmur as you walk one day towards her and gaze from her branches at the sky unveiled with a gift of awen. That's my poem. And now the one he returned to me. One day I'll die, of course. What will remain? The llatau you thought to send me, and the beauty of human kindness will remain. The stain of my tears falling drop by drop to mix with Wales's famous rain. As I read your poem, they will remain. The leaf you took from the rowan tree and sent me, that I held with eyes and hands, placed over my heart and swayed back and forth. Light glinted upon time. A butterfly, a tiny impish butterfly alighted to drink water from the hoofprint of mountain goat. The moon came out, and I remembered doves and the fresh scent rising from bread. I held my true love so very tightly after years of separation. That's how I read the secret of life's glorious onrush. Read it in the leaf that you sent me. One day I'll die, of course. What will remain? The leaf of the rowan you sent me. My loved ones will weep at my passing, and this poem for you will remain. He's a very special person, full of serenity, even though he's been incarcerated as a Kurd, imprisoned and rounded up along with hundreds of students from the university when he was 19. And now he's been there all that time, and yet he can still joke. He still has his humour, which is wonderful to know. Before I read the next one, I just would like to say that the next one is rather more tragic. Charles Simic said that poetry is serenity in the midst of chaos. And I think we've all witnessed that feeling of witnessing chaos and finding perhaps a little serenity in writing. And that's what happens when we heard of the death of Reifat al-Hariri, and he died. He was a famous Palestinian poet, academic, professor, and everybody, the PEN community, wrote letters, chain poems to him. And his last poem is about a child sending a kite to the sky. And so this is a poem I wrote as part of that, and Nicky Beach translated it. So I'll read some in Welsh and then the English. Ac gweithiau, dim ond cerdd ffwrdd â hi yw'r un sy'n cyfri, ac gerdd am anfon barcud i'r awyr yn ein clyw. Achos bellach, ti yw'r achos dros lunio rhes o eiriau na allan aros. A ti yw'r chwedl bellach, sy'n croesi o genedl i genedl. Sometimes, only a slapdash poem will do, with your lines on launching a kite to the wind in our ears. Because now you are the reason to line up the words that cannot wait. And you are now the story, crossing continents that inspires the heart. For they took your breath and your plea for life's pleasures. And your words are on the wind without a temple of feelings, nor an easing of a man's instinct in civility. And our wailing elegies cannot catch your child's kite string, but we can look up to the sky and seeing the wind, the downtrodden and silent and mute, those so true and stoic for settling for homes, those newly born from afar, a song within us that will not cease, and not the lowly peasants nor the wicked, but a host who speak for creation. Palestine, look again, and you will see from the string released freely from his hand the kite flying high above. Edrychwch eto ac fe welwch o'r llinyn o llyngwyd yn rhydd yn ei law.
Power of poetry to bring absent friends into the room with us. Nessa, Sean Aled, I'd like to welcome to the stage. And just to explain for those of you at home, we'll be alternating between poets who are here in the room in London and poets that are across Wales in various places online. So Sean, if you'd like to come to the stage next.
So the first poem is in Welsh and an English version, and it's a reflection on the complex relationship between us in Wales and myself personally, and the Romani people and other travelling people in our country. Iachau. Cofio clywed am Antiani, gwpl o genedlaethau nôl, a'r mab na allai gerdded. Nes I sipsi alw, a rhwng gwerthu pegiau, annog rhwbiau goesau a gwymon, a cherddor. Ond sipsiwn go iawn oedd rheini. Clywais wedyn, nid tincaws a trafeliaws yma, mond trwbl ydyn nhw. Ond cefais o gyswllt, a rhai I slaw parch, iachad rhag parlus arall. I remember the story about Auntie Annie a couple of generations ago, and her son who couldn't walk, until a gypsy called, who told her how she sold her pegs to rub his legs with seaweed. And he walked. But they were real gypsies, so I heard later, not like these tinkers and travellers who are just trouble. But from my contact with those beneath respect, I learned another healing. And the second poem is in Wenglish. I think you'll understand why as I read it. It's from my experience, and I'm sure you've heard the story of people going into pubs and shops and other places, and everybody turns to Welsh so they don't understand. Well, this was an early experience for me of that. Turning tongues. Sometime in 1963, I remember because my mum showed me the shiny new penny. Well, new old penny, like. Yli, ceiniog newydd, ac roedd newydd eto I ddod, ar y trên efo dad. Trains had compartments then, and steam, and they went everywhere on time. But that's another story. Siarad Cymraeg, wrth gwrs, ond others entered our space. English, not by race, or nation, just language. That's what divided then. A wedyn dad yn siarad Saesneg. Be? Pam? Rhag iddyn nhw feddwl bod ni'n siarad amdanyn nhw. And my first act of linguistic rebellion, of radical rudeness, was to refuse to siarad Saesneg just so they'd understand and not be hurt by our provocative privacy. Maybe there is somewhere, some pub, some shop, where Saesneg morphs to Gymraeg to elude the alien. Ond coeliwch fi, we've yielded more than enough the other way.
Diolch, Sean. And now we go across to Cardiff and join Angela Graham, who is going to come up on the screen for those of you in the room by magic.
Hello. I hope you can hear me, that somebody will tell me if you can't. I'm going to read two poems. I'm from Northern Ireland and doing siarad Cymraeg gyda gacen cryf gogledd Iwerddon. I speak Welsh with a very strong Belfast accent. I've lived in Wales for 42 years. I also write in Ulster Scots, and for the month of March, I'm going to be the Scots Language Centre's Macker of the Month, so the writer of the month. The first poem is called Colony, and it's about what I believe happens to languages in a situation of colonialism. It appeared in Poetry Wales recently, and then with their kind permission in Fortnight, the cultural and political magazine in Northern Ireland. Colony. Your words in my mouth are bitter, a double dispossession of the land itself, of its relationship with me, a double supplantation. My words in your mouth are strange, a double reaving of my tongue itself, of its cadences and music, a double apprehension. But in this land new to you, you are obliged to ask me, what is this? Where are we now? And you know I can't obey you unless I understand. So you have to compromise, and word by word, my speech is entering you, as though you kissed me with the kisses of your mouth, my lord, my brother, drinking me down. Reaver or bereaved, we all will rot to the same soil, become the earth we fought each other for. And yet, these words of mine, yeast in your generations, when your descendants love the land, not merely own it, these words will help them hear that you did let me in, and your words, salting the speech of mine, will let them hear themselves strangely unstrange in a sister tongue. And I've written this poem especially for today's event. It's called Wales Cymru. A country with two names, land of strangers, land of comrades, named from outside, named from within, dizzyingly them and us in one. Here, language, known to be a tool for good or ill, a gate to exclude or welcome, a shield wall or a dance, is also known to be the perfect murderee, silent in its own wake, unable to lament itself, and therefore here, language, known to be air inhabited, ensouled and vital, is knowledge known bone deep. So this people chooses, thwarting the binaries, the open path, the open ear, and ready tongue. Thank you. It's a great pleasure to read.
Huge round of applause that met the end of that reading all the way there in Cardiff. Now, back into the room. The next poet we're going to invite up is Patrick Dobbs. So Patrick is on his way, and I'm going to move the microphone slightly upward on this one, I think.
After 9 years as an itinerant agricultural worker in England, Ireland, Canada, and South America, I ended up in a small little farm in East Carmarthenshire, in what was then overwhelmingly a Welsh-speaking community. So I signed myself up for Course Carlam Cymraeg, a crash course in Welsh. It was held in Llandovery College. It lasted a week. And at the end of the week, we had to fill in a questionnaire, you know, that sort of thing. Was the level of instruction much too easy, fairly easy, about right, too difficult, or totally incomprehensible? And you had about 12 questions like that. And after the questions, there was a blank page, and it said, further comments on the course. Well, do you know, I went to every lecture, I did all my homework, but I'm ashamed to admit it, but even after that week, I was still only halfway there. And so far as I remember, my further comments went something like this. Oes rhywun yn eisiau siarad Cymraeg, diolch I Llandovery and sit by my side. We'll get down together, trwy nos a trwy dydd, a thraw ac a thrawes, a dysgwyr I gyd. Dechrau yn y bori. Oh, the verb I forgot. Oedd rhaid iddyn nhw erioed to have the Welsh note? O bore dydd Sadwrn I next week, Sunday night, byddwn ni'n gallu ymarfer mae'n right. Mae un o'r pethau gorau am Cymraeg, it's true. Oes wedi anghofio, gall Saesnig will do. The rules, maen nhw'n simple. Dod o gariau mewn pot ar a tynnu nhw allan fel prynu job lot. Mae hael in his heaven. Mae coleg yn dda. Pobl dod I Llandovery, o near ac o far. And oes yn y diwedd, it's a mixed-up affair. Well, better try gladau, does anyone care?
Diolch, Patrick. Thanks so much. Okay, so Simon Mundy.
I first realised I needed reading glasses when I was doing a reading with Peter Finch in a pub in Grangetown in Cardiff about 25 years ago. And I had a choice. I could either read my poetry without my glasses on or see the audience with my glasses on, but not both at the same time. So now I've got the reading glasses. I'm going to start with a poem, one of a series of poems which was set eventually to music by the wonderful composer Cecilia McDowell, Radnor songs, which were commissioned by the Prestine Festival about 20 years ago. And they were written at a table outside the Harp in Old Radnor, which is a table, which not that table, evidently, but a place where both Coleridge and Wordsworth sat and wrote their poetry, because Wordsworth's brother-in-law lived in the farm below, looking out across the extraordinary Neolithic landscape of the Walton Valley. The Buzzard. On the ridge above Radnor, 4 barrows prick the skyline. Half moons for the bones of kings who become pointers to the stars. Now their hunting fields are mine, for I can outspan their arms, swoop faster than their rabble, with a cry soar and open their horizon to the falling sun. Radnor, old church and harp. Caught between the placid green of hopeless farms and the road rush, fleeing or seeking cities, each tree and turf flank shields an era, the rubbish of violence, the boundaries of lost significance. A path leads nowhere. Ditch to bramble patch, pint to table, pub to bungalow, instead of castle, moat to thoroughfare, stadium to sanctuary. There is no truculent Roman or conqueror's man-at-arms, no rebel or persecuted priest. The chariots rot beneath unnecessary sheep. Aristocrats have dismissed their servants, sold their mansions to democracy. Rabbits breed where chieftains sacrificed for a benign scene such as this, ravaged by tranquility. And one which I wrote when I had been living halfway up a hillside in Gwaith, which is just to the west of the border with England. 25 years on, Prestine Festival and Gwaith after 25 years. Where I planted a slender hedge, a damson forest spreads across the field, and apple, cherry, and copper beech have shrugged off their sapling support, hold their own against the storms with confidence. The curlews have fled the breeding buzzards, and the faithful swallows have left the bats their stretch of roof, which sags where the builder once said, rightly, it would last for years. Outside, in front, the ground has risen perceptibly. A century has changed, a quarter past, a generation's beauty has furrowed and eroded, desire crumbled into bitter flakes through parenthood and worse, one circumference grown without accomplishment to match. Music, once so new it frightened, now rests easy in the catalogue of old invention, waiting for revival, measured by fresh fingers, counted, like us, quite sweet, motherly though misshapen by neglect and time. The plants have progressed from paper to ash, to compost, nurturing the accidental damsons. Will there be hours enough, and inclination, and hope to reap their fruit? And now finally reaching abroad, a poem that I wrote after I'd been doing a reading in Rome at the Keats Shelley Museum, and I was going up to Tuscany and towards San Gimignano. And so here's San Gimignano. I've been searching for a poem I wrote in San Gimignano 30 years ago. There's nothing in the files. No scrap or sketch or copy typed on thin carbon paper. Perhaps I never wrote it. Just sat despondent in that olive grove outside the walls, moping over love not lost because it was never found. Seething after she had so pointedly gone nightly to the man across the road. I had taken umbrage to Tuscany. Reflection hardly helped. Afterwards, I leapt lemming-like into bad idea after absurd idea. I'm sure I wrote that poem, though. Maybe it hides in a forgotten book like this, a chronicle of searches, abandoned chides, waiting for affectionate excavation. Thank you very much.
Diolch, thank you, Simon. It's great to think of this event as being from Wales to the world, and we've been thinking about international issues, but also this kind of tour around Wales that we're doing of Llandovery and then now Old Radnor and Prestine. And we tried to go to Swansea and we didn't get very far. So hopefully we can go right up into the northwest now into Pentryn Deudraeth, where Sian Northey is hopefully out there in the ether and is going to come up on screen. Sian, you're there. Hooray. Amazing. Okay, so
I'm
welcome. Croeso. Over to you.
Diolch yn fawr, a helo i bawb o Pentryn Deudraeth. Dwi am ddarllen dwy gerdd fer yn ddanosodd yn Poetry Wales llynedd. Y rhifin oedd yn canolbwyntio ar ieithoedd yng Nghymru ac ar y Gymraeg yn arbennig. Un gerdd Gymraeg ac un yn Saesneg. I'm going to read 2 short poems, one in Welsh, one in English. Both appeared in Poetry Wales last year. It was an issue concentrating on language, especially Cymraeg. In the first, the Welsh poem, the speaker describes how she talks in Welsh to her dog and how, with this dog, possibly with the next, this will come to an end, with the dog still sitting, waiting in vain for her to return with its biscuits. Perhaps it's to do with sometimes things coming to an end in a rather undramatic way. There is also an unseasonably hot summer in the poem. It's called Rhyw Ddydd, One Day. Rhyw Ddydd. Mi fydda i'n dal yn siarad yn Gymraeg efo'r ci. Nid y ci hwn, y nesaf efallai. Y ddau ohonom wedi cerdded hyd y ceia crin ben bora mwyn osgoi, gres, llethol, rhyw haf, hir felyn, tesog, borwnt. Cyn dychwelyd i'r tŷ y gysgodi. Byddaf yn dweud, istad, aros, yn andiflannu i'r gegin gefn, i nôl i fisgeden, a byth yn dychwelyd. Mae'r gerdd nesa yn gerdd Saesneg, a pa welis i alwad am gerddi yn edrych ar y Gymraeg yng Nghymru, ar hyn nath trwy'n meddwl i oedd mae edrych arna i fydd pobl, gwrthrych y cerddi fydda i, nid yr un sy'n edrych ar y testyn, fel anifal mewn sŵ. When I saw the request from Poetry Wales for poems about Cymraeg in Wales, I realised that I, my family, my friends, my community would be looked at and written about. Bit like being an animal in a zoo. This way to the amphibian house. I can't look from outside, can I? Nor read the labels. I am the newt in the vivarium. I can only see that monolingual eye glancing as it passes before stopping to peer at the tiny toad who lives next door. When it's gone, we shrug, agree that it's a beautiful eye, that it sees more than we do, and yet sees less. The toad gives me a wink, and we hide under some exquisite bark and look out. Diolch yn fawr.
Pleased to announce that PEN Cymru have just adopted a cat. And I don't know if we can get Sian back up to tell us the cat's name, Dominic.
Yeah, I don't know if you hear me. The cat is called Tegan and is absolutely Zoom obsessed.
Brilliant. Well, if you're happy with that, Sian, I think we can adopt that as the Wales PEN Cymru official cat. Those of you who are on, yeah, thank you very much. Diolch. So as those of you who are on Zoom, I was going to say, probably can't see the one thing that the people in the room can see, which is that there is a musical instrument set up here at the front. So I'm going to invite Felice forward just to contextualize this for us a little bit. We're going to have a musical interlude and then a conversation and then one more poet to finish, who happens to be the national poet. Here's Felice.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my task is to invite Ali here, yes, isn't it? Shall I do that first, Ali, who is the owner of this instrument? Yeah? Would you like to join me here? We were thinking about how to do that, and Ali is going to sing, well, Ali has translated one of the Welsh songs into English and he's going to perform that. But also he's a musician who performs in his own language, Kurmanski. Kurmanski is a minority language who for a very, very long time was banned. Although the ban is lifted, it's not institutionalized, formalized, or it's not being spoken or taught in formal institutions in Turkey. So that is also my mother tongue that I can't speak. And that connects me to Wales, that the loss and trauma of my own language connects me to Wales. I've been living in Wales since 2005, and it's been home for me to see the similar trajectories of how Welsh language and Kurdish languages were oppressed. And in finding that connection, I found a home for myself. And over the past 10 years, I think pretty much from the beginning of Wales PEN Cymru, I've become involved. I felt as I was a part of Wales PEN Cymru. And that strengthened that sense of identity, sense of belonging, sense of being home in exile for me. Ali is new to UK, but as soon as I met him, I introduced him to the Welsh context, which is taken quite nicely. And now I'm introducing him to perform his music for us all. Thank you.
So, thank you for everything. I think I learned my own language with poems and lyrics and songs. Very important to keep the language alive. We should teach to our childrens. And thank you. I was just gonna say I'm a Kurdish. I came from Kurdistan, and I'm supporting the Wales and Welsh language.
Kuzeyena daye berbena wi Kuzeyena daye berbena wi koyde cencimay kişte huy Haşime lazım-ı teyro huy Zımıstano pukaleka vay Zımıstano pukaleka klamuvana hui hui Klemare klamuvana hui hui Vana bekhte bekeshiyema hui hui Sevema serbiye tariye dinge tariye hui hui Zımstano pukaleka vay Zımstano pukaleka vay
Thank you. One more Kurdish song, and I will sing one Welsh song, and you have the paper. If we sing together, it will be perfect for me because it's too hard to try. Yeah, thank you.
Gule vore vora estoriye hardi Kesi yekem na to kerdi avadero berdi Kesi yekem na to kerdi avadero berdi Nere gule hey hey hey yaro yaro hey jano jano hey Hertene nayo jano jeni pepo jeni yaramna tey Ere gule hey hey hey yaramna tey Sukar zingani yara khorache biyari Gula khorache biyari Anam shalom yane bari Fosa sere sari Aynı vere çari Nere gule hey hey hey Yaro yaro hey Jano jano hey Hertene nayo jero yeni Pepo yeni Gulamına tey Ere gule hey hey hey Yaramına tey
And the last one is hardest one. Yeah. Can we try? Oh, I have, but I'm so excited because it's my first Welsh song, and I just listened. I don't have any idea when I see the vision of English, and I just changed the phonetics. I can try. I just, yeah. Dakun her yade laurana berşlen turum dirorum diradelidilav. Dakun her yade laurana berşlen turum dirorum diradelidilav. Ona baunina ve hünen turum dirorum diradelidilav. Dakur tia, dakur skibar, dakur truso beidinagor. Faldiradelidilav, faldiradelidilav, turum dirorum diradelidilav. Faldiradelidilav, faldiradelidilav, turum dirorum diradelidilav. Dakur ferven viken henoch, turum dirorum diradelidilav. Gologarni sifar serchog, turum dirorum diradelidilav. Miar hosafene cheskot, nesdang hariading haferfot. Feldiradelidilav, feldiradelidilav, turum dirorum diradelidilav. Feldiradelidilav, feldiradelidilav, turum dirorum diradelidilav. Thank you.
So, yeah, moving on from that. I've got this dysgwr kind of neckerchief on today. What are these things called? Lanyard, that's the word. I'm all over the place now. And I'm thinking, actually, Comanche must be a much better starting point for learning Welsh than English in terms of the phonetics and the sounds, because that sounded pretty beautiful and pretty on point from where I was sitting in terms of that. So next up, we've got Mehmet Ali Alabora, who's going to join me up here at the front. And we're just going to have a brief conversation before a couple more poems, and then Hanan Isa to round things off this afternoon. So thanks so much for joining us, Mehmet Ali. I'm not quite sure where to look, whether I'm looking at this, or whether I'm looking at the screen or at you. But welcome. We're just going to have a conversation really about freedom of expression, linguistic rights, and your journey into Wales and Welshness and the language. And when I try to explain to people who've never heard of PEN or never heard of PEN International or Wales PEN Cymru, what is PEN? I always start by saying it's an organisation that campaigns for freedom of expression. So I wonder whether, just to start with, you just give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself through the lens of freedom of expression and why that is so important in your life and in your country, as well as everywhere.
Thank you, Croeso. So, by the way, this is an amazing event for me, because I recently relocated to London. So I'm a double exile now. So I'm a Turkish exile and I'm a Welsh exile. So this is great to see Cymru here. So that's like really good. So my story obviously begins. My story in Wales begins with freedom of expression. You may remember Gezi Park protests 11 years ago now, like 10 and a half years ago, just in the center of Istanbul. There were massive protests to protect the trees. The protest became an arena, not just to protect the trees, but also to voice people's concerns about many things. And I sent a tweet on the 13th of May, 2013. And the tweet said, the matter is not just Gezi Park, my friend. Haven't you still realized? Come, resist, hashtag resist Gezi Park. That was a tweet. This tweet then become probably the most notorious tweet of all time in the whole of Turkish history, or Twitter history in Turkey, let's say. This was used, this tweet alone was used as the basis that Gezi Park protests were not innocent environmental protests, but an attempted civil coup to topple down the government. And I'm now being tried with life in prison without parole twice, and there are still 5 people behind bars in Turkey who are my friends. Some of them are my friends, some of I didn't know before all of this happened, but they are there just because they went to a park to first defend the trees and to voice their concerns about many things that they were concerned about. This tweet is so important in my life, and it almost concentrates the whole idea of freedom of expression. You cannot be accused of a tweet. You should never be accused of a tweet, which is not called tweet anymore, by the way, thanks to that man, whatever his name is. You don't realize how important it is until you really understand to your bones, or to like feel in your bones what it means to not be able to voice what you want to say. Since then, I have used Twitter very rarely because it nowadays, obviously, it turned into a mess, because now we are also doing it to each other, not just the governments, not just the authorities, but also we're doing it to each other and try to prevent others from expressing themselves. At the moment, that platform is just like a shithole of hatred, there used to be like proper debate in that, like thorough debate, but we don't have it anymore. Then I moved here. Here was Wales. So I moved to Wales, and I have been in Wales for 10 years. I mean, I still consider myself from Wales. Now I'm just living here. I don't live in London, I'm living in London. So there's a difference. But after moving here, everything started from looking from a freedom of expression point of view, everything started to seem weird, even in Britain as well. And you may sometimes think that there is total freedom of expression in Britain, and there isn't. There is an incredible latent censorship in some particular issues in Britain. And I always see this. And it amazed me. Maybe I wouldn't have seen that had I not went through this massive problem with freedom of expression. But after moving here, obviously there are bars. You know, you set the bars. The bar may be higher here, whereas in Turkey it's quite lower. But still, we need to fight for that. And PEN is one of those organizations who fights for that everywhere in the world. And we're not safe anywhere in the world. Not in the UK, not in Germany, not in these Western civilized countries like United States, which is one of the worst, probably. But we need to be vigilant, and we need to always, always defend freedom of expression, because it's so important. And one more thing before I leave it to you. We shouldn't allow it to be hijacked by right extremists, because they are hijacking freedom of expression, because there is a thin line, not even a thin line, excuse me. There's a massive line between hatred, hate speech, and freedom of expression. And hate speech is unacceptable, and it's not freedom of expression. So and because we're not vigilant and we're not defending it properly, they are owning it in the name of freedom of expression, which is not. They are conducting a propaganda of trying to package hate speech as freedom of speech, and there is a massive line there.
Thanks, Mehmet Ali. Really interested in what you said about this latent censorship that you've seen in the UK, and also in the fact that you identify as Welsh or being from Wales. I wonder. Yeah, well, I wonder if before we get onto that, maybe you could talk a little bit about the relationship between those two, because I wonder whether, or I wonder to what extent, having lived in Wales and engaged with learning the Welsh language has allowed you to see the UK in a light through which you might not have seen it had you come directly to London.
I'm originally from Istanbul, and Istanbul is in the center. Istanbul was only the periphery of Europe. So I know how to look from the periphery to the center from Istanbul, but Istanbul was the center. When you live there, it is where everyone looks up to, or you think that they do. That was one of my things, you know, in moving to Cardiff before anywhere else and having lived there, taught me about what is it to look from the periphery to the center. And I think what I realized about the UK, yes, obviously there are 4 nations in the UK, but before 4 nations, I think there's London and the rest. And most people in London think that we live outside of London because we can't afford to, or we couldn't manage to. They don't understand that it could be a choice that we don't want to live in London. You know, they are so London blind. So that was that was very interesting about seeing from the periphery, looking at the center. And when you watch TV from Wales, when you watch the news from Cardiff, and especially during Brexit and after the aftermath, everything, you see that they just don't bother. They just don't give a shit about us. You know, the whole conversation is never about us, never about the people not even north of England, not just in Wales, not just in Scotland or Northern Ireland. It's about like a small minority of people surrounding London and maybe some part of South England, and that's it. And that was an eye-opening thing for me, because for the first time, I realized how it should have been like looking from Diyarbakir to Istanbul, you know. And then I also realized, after I've toured across the whole of Wales 5 times, how it is also looking from Shirnak, a small other city of a Kurdish city in Turkey, towards Diyarbakir, because there's also a Cardiff-centric approach as well. You know, Rhyl has nothing to do with Cardiff, and probably Rhyl doesn't consider Cardiff as its capital. You know, the connection is so loose. Or even Carmarthenshire, you know, even Carmarthen is totally different from Cardiff. And so all these subtleties, probably it was thanks to Wales that I can see it clearly and in a more thorough way.
Thanks. And the other thing that we're here really today to talk about is language. And you went on a journey of learning Welsh while you were in Wales. I don't know whether that journey continues. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what the impulse was for you to want to begin learning Welsh, and what learning Welsh, again, a little bit similar to the last question, but what particularly the Welsh language then allowed you to see about Wales and Welsh culture that perhaps the many people in Wales who don't speak Welsh and maybe don't want to learn Welsh can not see.
So first of all, I'm still learning. I'm still shit at it, but at least I can understand when I see it, and I live, because I've got a creative agency and we always create stuff in Welsh. So I always somehow but see Welsh or immerse myself in Welsh every day, but I'm still not a fluent speaker, although I was in a Welsh show as one of the leads. But learning Welsh from the very start was like, I always liken it to going to France and not enjoying wine. I mean, it culturally, you know, if you're in France and you've never eaten cheese or wine, why are you there? Just move out. I mean, that is such a big part. First of all, culturally, you know, beyond all the politics and the language and everything, it is culturally so much part of Welsh culture. It is like, understanding what writes on Wales Millennium Centre and having an idea and familiarizing with yourself with words, and also then digging into those like little differences of saying rhwan in north and nawr in south. You know, all these subtleties only gives you a sense of proper belonging. And that is through the medium of Welsh, it became more obvious about the uniqueness of the culture with all its, you know, richness and language is an amazing thing. You know, it is very sad to be so living. Really, people who live in Wales and not ever familiarize. Of course, it's hard to learn a language, but at least you can familiarize yourself with the language. You know, and it was just, to me, it was absurd not to just have that connection at all.
And I wasn't going to ask you about this, but you brought it up. Independence, moving from that kind of linguistic and cultural aspects of understanding, you're in favour of Welsh independence.
So my creative agency back ran Yes Cymru's campaign for 12 months. And I'm still a member, and I still support Welsh independence, and I worked for Welsh independence. I am still one of the volunteers in AUOB, all under one banner. I work for Welsh independence because I believe every nation can be independent. Every soul, every person can be independent. And this argument of, oh, we're so small, we can't survive, is just like a proper coercive relationship. You know, it's like a coercive relationship where your partner tells that you're so small and you can't survive on your own. Well, any nation will survive on their own. There has never been a nation who couldn't survive on their own. Of course, we'll survive on our own. And the most important thing is that there is so potential in Wales that only by independence it can come to the fore. That's what I believe.
And finally, because amazingly, we're doing really well for time, I'm just going to ask one more question. Is the other thing that I couldn't let slip by in your previous answer was that you played the lead in a Welsh language television show. Tell us about that.
It was at S4C 3 years ago, called Flam, with Gwyneth Keyworth, and 6 episodes. It was an amazing experience. Like, unfortunately, couldn't go into the second season, which was planned, but didn't happen. But it was amazing. However, it was so hard that I had shingles trying to learn my lines. Yeah, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy.
Well, on that note, not the neatest of segues, but we're going to now read a poem in 2 languages, aren't we? So you're going to do Turkish, and then I'm going to do English, I think. Yeah.
Let's do it this way. Let's not say what poem.
Okay.
It's possible not to know.
Yeah.
But let's read it. Let me read in Turkish.
Okay. Do you want to? Should we swap? And do you want to take the stand there, Dominic? What do you think? Or here? Do it here. Okay. Lovely. Perfect.
So I'll read it in Turkish now, and you try to guess the poem in English, because then he will do it in English. And it's going to be my first time reading this in public, so apologies from the start. Gitme o güzel geceye usulca. İhtiyarlık yanmalı ve saçmalamalı gün kapandığında öfkelen ışığın ölümü karşısında. Akıllı adamlar bilmelerine rağmen karanlığa gömüleceklerini sonlarında, sözleri şimşek çaktırmamış olduğu içindir ki onlar gitmezler o geceye usulca. İyi insanlar son defa ellerini sallarlar. Öylesine ateşli bağırarak faydasız işleri yeşil bir koyda dans ediyor olabilir, ama onlar da öfkelenirler ışığın ölümü karşısında. Güneşi uçarken yakalamış olan vahşi insanlar ve öğrenen, çok geç yas tuttuklarını onun yolunda, gitmezler o güzel geceye usulca. kör gözlerin göktaşı gibi alevlenip şenlenmesini kör eden bir görme gücüyle gören ağır hasta adamlar da öfkelenirler. Öfkelenirler ışığın ölümü karşısında. Ve sen, benim papam, hüzünlü, tepede, orada, yalvarırım, lanetle ve kutsa beni şimdi acımasız gözyaşlarınla, ama gitme o güzel geceye usulca, öfkelen, öfkelen ışığın ölümü karşısında.
I think that deserves a round of applause. Also gives chance for people to type in the chat what they think the poem is. And I'll give a couple of seconds for people in the room. I could see Menna looking like she might know what it was. Anyone want to have a guess?
Öfkelen, öfkelen ışığın ölümü karşısında.
Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight and learned too late they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And with that, we are going to swap microphones. Mehmet Ali and I will stay here. And I'd like to invite the National Poet of Wales to the stage, Hanan Isa.
Coming. So I'm going to start off with a piece that I wrote as a commission in celebration of a woman from Welsh history. Her name was Cronogwen. And for a long time, she was kind of forgotten. And I don't want to tell you too much about her because I'd love it if you go away and Google her if you're not familiar with her story. She was an incredible teacher, an activist, and a sailor. You know, there's so many really interesting aspects to her life. And I co-wrote this with the previous Bardd Plant, Cassie Wynn, and we had the privilege of performing this on the beach in Llangollen, and it was really special. I'm not a fluent Welsh speaker, and so I do apologise for my pronunciation, but I'm giving it my best because I'm going to read Cassie's bits as well. Dywed beth oedd ei gyffrinach. Tell me of Cronogwen, said the sea to the shore. Dywed beth oedd ei gyffrinach. She was brave, came the reply, softer than a crab shifting on sand. Merch y graig, gonest, garw, cryf oedd hi. My bones remember her steps. Penderfynoldeb ei chamau, so certain, so assured. Unafraid of molding new paths through sands, my fields, they still hum her memories, playful as the wind. A deimli di ei halaw, yn ymestyn dros fy nhreithau, ei geiriau, gloiw gynt yn adlewyrchu yn fy greigiau. Ah, yes, my seaweed, my rocks recall her voice well. Yma bu barddoniaeth mewn heli, raising the daily works of women and girls. Gwireddu gobeithion till her song reached the gulls soaring overhead. They carried her words across the sea, ei brawddegau a deithiant, to shores far away and future. Merch dolgau fach, hwyliau ymhell, gan hei heilioni, a chenhesrwydd Ceredigion, a llenwi chalon. O Cronogwen! They cried when offering her the helm carved of memory, ritual, soaking into wood. Hi yn ei holl hynodrwydd sy'n parhau yn adlu bywyd yn pryd. Her words still echo through my trees as they tell saplings the adventures of a woman who would not waver. She reads my waters. Darllenodd pob deigryn a gwei a dafedd arian, rhwng atgof at atgof, hearing the whispers of the stars at night. I sent soothing waves, ton I hen si hei luri mabli, gently rocking her into dreams of the deep. Secrets I shared as she slept, and Cronogwen awoke with my sighs on her tongue. Now I keep her, our sweet Sarah, beloved of sea and shore, yn ar tir ei carodd, her life a glimmering dream mewn urddas, gorffwysa in my earthen embrace. Dear a blodau, root and seed, kissing her bones. So, this next piece, it was a commission, but it was to do with diversity, and which I was a bit bored of talking about, which, you know, we're all bored of talking about. And I'd actually been reading a book called When We Cease to Understand the World. It's written by Benjamin Labatut, and it's basically this crazy, like, jump into the lives of the founding fathers of quantum theory. So nothing at all to do with diversity. And I was like, yeah, that's where I'm going. So it's called the ABCDs of Equal Opportunities. Are you familiar with quantum entanglement? Burdened with the belief you don't belong because you choke on Arabic when a white friend loses a loved one. Display yourself for this monitoring form that allows us to consider how many people bathed in chocolate dust when the lint factory malfunctioned in 2020. Cocoa-coated cars and chimneys across town. Dreams do come true, someone said once. Are you familiar with quantum entanglement? Braided together, the split elements in a ceaseless long-distance relationship defy Einstein. Imagine all it took was tiny tardigrades to prove him wrong. And we know that entwined, separated entities, boundaried by time and space, can somehow feel what the other does. Like when the protesters in Iraq took out their phones and told the military, "We are recording you, beware, Allah is watching." I felt that. Or catching school kids' laughter at the traffic lights. I don't know how to warn them of what's coming, about the cold and the anger. All so cold, watching bloated, sallow, milky mouths swallow more and more Cymru. And byth will they snatch Welsh waters while distracting us, switching conversations to swathes of refugees washing ashore like Hokusai sea foam, hearts as broken as bodies lacking life jackets clinging to sodden memories. The damp sets in when they face their first aggressive questioning at the doctors or the bank. They would buy bread back home if they could. Why not offer them a second home, not something that destroys the local landscape, but a space they can care for and, inshallah, breathe in. Sometimes saying Syria makes the same sound as cofiwch. Can you taste chocolate dust on your tongue yet? Diolch am rhoi eich amser I ateb y cwestiynau hyn. Thank you. I didn't plan to read this, but I've just been speaking to Simon and we were talking about South America and just how incredible place it is. And I had the privilege of visiting Frida Kahlo's house last year, and it was quite a spiritual experience for me. It's called Frida's House. We hushed pilgrims, herded room to room, flocked to the pieces of a heart broken and remade, and family photos and handwritten fragments, to the cobalt blue, sunshine yellow, hand-painted door frames, and sacred pots of paint and walnut oil. But even here, in Frida's house, amid the no flash signs and supervised serenity, I watch women and their cameras flashing, taking, her bed, her mirror, her wheelchair. Most miss her ashes, witnessing from the plain clay pot on the dresser. I recall seeing a butterfly in the Mexico City traffic on the way here, that fragile fluttering rising above the dreary clunk. At the base of her bed, not a life-size 90s Leo poster like me, but poster boys Marx, Mao, and Lenin. I go back to her ashes. We don't share a faith. I don't know the protocol for speaking to the dust of a hero. Hot tears fall because she is my saint, this house my holy finger bone. I call on her courage to surround myself with beauty, even when, especially when, the world seems full of shit. I wait for a moment alone and whisper to the walls, let me be a ribbon-wrapped bomb too. Let me float above the clamor and calamity too. Let me explode gently with colorful risks when pain pins me down to the pavement too. I buy her face on a keyring in the gift shop. It seems gauche, these high-priced talismans on pillows and purses. Would she approve? An anti-capitalist? Surely not. But a woman in love, who paints her own face over and over again, perhaps. Thank you. I'd just like to end really with, a remembering, we can't ignore what's facing us every day in Gaza. And so I did just want to, you mentioned his name, and I wanted to mention his name again, Rafat al-Arir, his poem, Planet Hitting the Sun, I Am You. All you have to do is close your eyes. Seeing these days blinds our hearts. Close your eyes tightly so that you can see in your mind's eye. Then look into the mirror. 1, 2, I am you. I am your past. And killing me, you kill you. Thank you.
What an incredible way to end an incredible afternoon. It's food for thought, but hopefully what we've also provided this afternoon is thought for action. It's been a privilege for me to spend this afternoon with all of you, some incredible poets, incredible human beings that we've heard. So I thank all of you who've been involved in today's event in whatever capacity. And so as we think about that and turn in those thoughts and inspirations that we've had today into actions, it feels a little bit trite, really, to say, a first step could be to join PEN and to think about joining Wales PEN Cymru. But that's one of the reasons that we're running the event, to just encourage people to be involved and to get together like this. Is I suppose it's also quite moving to think, we've got this empty chair next to us. Hanan has just read a poem about somebody who was a brother and somebody who has departed. And then there's all of you who are out there in real life, but somewhere else on Zoom. It feels unreal to be talking online. And if you can and want to find out more about the organisation, then do look at Wales PEN Cymru online, have a look, think about joining, and we'll see you at the next event. Diolch.